On this edition of the NESN Red Sox podcast, we'll break down Boston's current make-or-break stretch and determine what that means for the rest of 2019.
And we'll talk about trade rumors, who the Red Sox are connected to, who they could send away in potential deals, and whether they should be buyers or sellers at next week's deadline.
Swing and a miss, strike three, it's over. The Red Sox have won the World Championship.
The Red Sox walk it off. Mookie Betts. That ball is gone. The X-Man strikes. What a bullet by Devers.
I love to see the exit velocity on that one.
It's time to party.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NESN Red Sox podcast. I'm Ricky Doyle, joined as always by Dakota Randall. Dakota bringing that star power today. What's going on, man?
Not too much. How you doing?
Nah, I'm doing all right. Not so much with the Red Sox, though.
No. Well, I mean, all right.
I guess. We'll get into it.
The game we just watched was bad
So,
for many reasons.
We'll get right into this game. This being recorded on Wednesday, Hump Day. A little afternoon affair down at the Trop. And really, it was looking at about 1:30 on Wednesday afternoon like the Red Sox were on their way to a sweep of the Rays, which I think might have, changed the outlook in some people's minds, I guess, as to how they're going to approach this trade deadline. I don't know if it changes yours at all, but
Also would have put you squarely, I think, in the Rays' heads because you would have had two sweeps at Tropicana Field this season.
it would have been a nice, you would have went into this weekend series against the Yankees feeling good. I mean, obviously this is a crucial stretch for them. I think there's, it's no secret. It's been well documented in recent days. You got 3 games just happened against the Rays, now 4 against the Yankees, and you got 3 against the Rays again and 4 more against the Yankees. So a stretch of 14 games against the 2 teams ahead of you in the AL East. This really is the season.
Do you remember a stretch like this? I've tried to think. I don't remember this ever happening before.
No.
Where you got 2 4-game series with the Yankees in the span of like 10 days.
It's wild, too,
Or
that this is
11
going
days.
to mark the first time the Yankees have come to Fenway Park this season.
Which is
This,
crazy.
we're closing in on the trade deadline, closing in on August, and it's the first time here. But
Yeah.
it lends itself to a very meaningful, which should be a very entertaining stretch. Could dictate whether the end of the summer features meaningful baseball in the Boston area.
Yep.
And yeah, so let's just start there. I mean, you want to start with what we saw this afternoon, and maybe just takeaways from this Red Sox-Rays series in general, how they've sort of begun this stretch. Because, like I said, they went into this thing that was just a trashy series over the weekend.
Yeah.
Not feeling great about the situation, and then they take the first 2, which featured some highs and some lows. And then you get into Wednesday, and it sort of went south right in the 5th inning, and a very strange ending to the game as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good they won the first 2 games. At this point, you're in a position where any way you can get wins, you got to do it, and they just got to win these games, and so that's great and all. But they didn't change my view of the team whatsoever. I mean, I personally look more at. I mean, you just lost 2 of 3 in Baltimore, so I mean, yeah, you won the first 2 games against Tampa, but it's also, in that first game, you're up 8-0, and then I think at one point the tying run came on the on-deck circle in the 9th. So yeah, you can say that's because Nathan Eovaldi came back and he was rusty, but it's like, okay, I understand he was rusty, but he was still horrible. Then it means you should have probably had him, stay longer in the minors rehabbing. So I think it's pretty clear they rushed him back, and I forget who came in after that. I think it was Taylor. He put him in on 2nd and 3rd in the 9th, and so it was another ugly bullpen game. Spoiling a great start by Eduardo Rodriguez. Well, not spoiling it, but you had a great start from Eduardo Rodriguez. That should have been a game where 2 mop-up relievers kind of come in. Didn't happen. And then you have the second game, which you also won, but Chris Sale only goes 6. He gets, I think he got 10 strikeouts, or maybe only 9. But either way, it was another game where Chris Sale, he had the strikeout numbers, but it was a lot of long counts. He was hardly overpowering, hardly dominant. All of my concerns I've had about Chris Sale remain even after the last 2 starts where he's amassed like 24 strikeouts. And then, again, the bullpen almost blew that one last night, too, with Brandon Workman, so you still have to feel bad about that. And then today, I mean, David Price pitched a good game. I think you just kind of ran into a pitcher in Charlie Morton that played really, it has been really great this season and pitched very well today. Again, the bullpen looks sketchy at the end. Mr. Spin Rate, Colton Brewer. Josh Taylor looked okay, and then Heath Embry walked a couple guys. Just the same thing. Messy back in the game.
Crap.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, they
Groundhog
won. They took 2
It's
out of 3.
absolute Groundhog Day.
Yeah, they took 2 out of 3, but I look at it and I'm like, it was still the same Red Sox. They
It's-
look the same.
That Monday night win, which at first it was looking like sort of a definitive win, a little bit of a statement win. You come out and you kick the crap out of Tampa in their own place to kick off this stretch. And next thing you know, things start unraveling. And the game was never really in doubt. I mean, you mentioned they brought the time into the on-deck circle, whatever. But it didn't feel like it was snowballing to that point. But it was just frustrating to watch because
Well, left a sour taste in your mouth too, because it's like, well,
it's just a continuation of what we've seen with them just making life difficult for themselves.
Yeah.
Nothing comes easy. I mean, that's a game that, Tampa Bay punted in the final few innings of that game. They had a position player on the mound, even in an 8-3 game, they were mailing it in.
It also
and
makes
the
me
fact that
yeah.
it got to where it did.
It also makes me wonder why you didn't put Eovaldi in that blowout in the final game in Baltimore. Why didn't you just throw him out there and give him some reps there? Instead, you spoil him in that blowout game, and then in the next night, you could have really used him in that one instead of having to put in Marcus Walden. I don't know, just the whole thing. A lot of weird bullpen decisions throughout the Baltimore series and the Tampa series. It just all sort of reinforces that it's a sloppy team. None of it. There's been no sort of flow to anything. It's just 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
We'll see. So I think there's something to be said for, playing competitive games down the stretch or having these back and forth affairs. I think there have been instances in recent years where you could look at a team that goes through those stretches and it sort of, it hardens you a little bit, gets you ramped up for potentially October baseball. But this isn't one of those situations. These close games that they're having, or these games that are they're sort of back and forth or whatever, it's sort of been just their own wrongdoing.
And this
it's
one
been
is
their own set of issues. It's not like they're fighting back and clawing into a game,
right?
And they're showing this this moxie. It's more or less just a collection of sloppiness.
In today's game, I think it was just one of, listen, you had a 2-0 lead. Rays, came up with 3 runs in the middle innings. They're going to do that. They've been a pretty good team this season. And then, Charlie Morton gave you nothing on the other side. Those games happen. I don't really have any huge issues with this game, other than the monstrosity that we saw in the 8th inning, which, I don't even think we should try to explain that. And
yeah.
For people who are just listening to this now, or whenever this, we put this online, maybe the whole protest thing will be resolved. But the Red Sox did finish that game under protest because of the Rays. So how do I explain this? They had one pitcher.
Go ahead, because I don't feel like doing it.
They had one reliever. They had Chad Rowe in as a reliever to pitch to Mookie Betts. But the previous batter, on the first batter of the inning, you had Kolarek, a lefty.
You're losing me, yeah.
All right. So first batter of the inning, you had Kolarek, who was a lefty. He got whoever it was out, and then after that, Kevin Cash comes in and moves him over to first base, takes out Choi, removes Choi from the game, puts Kolarek at first base, then brings in Chad Rowe to pitch to Mookie Betts. So you have a righty on righty. And then as soon as Mookie Betts flies out to left field, he comes back in, removes Rowe, and takes Kolarek from first base and puts him back on the mound, so you have a lefty on lefty against Devers. And so then what ended up happening there was, instead of saying that Kolarek replaced Choi, Kevin Cash said that he actually replaced the DH in the lineup. Whoever that was, I forget. And so he was going in that spot in the lineup when he should have gone in this. And so you had 2 pitchers in the lineup. Alex Cora got mad. It was all about that, where everybody slotted in after this weird thing that Kevin Cash did that I'd actually never even seen before. And so the Red Sox play the remainder of the game under protest. And our friend Andre just made a good point in that usually when these playing under protest things happen, it's usually something that's not going to be. There's no chance of it getting reversed.
It's more or less like a formality to play it
used to
protest.
I think it happened more often before instant replay came, where you'd say, well, we don't. That play at first base was garbage. The guy was out or whatever, and you play under that protest, and the league says, go screw. The stuff happens.
Yeah.
This one feels like it might be legitimate. It didn't impact the game because the Rays never had to come up again, but. It looked like there was something got botched there, and the chatter on Twitter seems to say that there's no real chance of this being replayed, but it's at least something more legitimate where the Red Sox might have a case here.
Yeah, just the overall optics of it were horrendous.
Right. The big takeaway is that
for Major League Baseball as a whole.
Right. The real takeaway is that you had I think it was a 6-pitch inning, including 2 pitching changes that took about 27 minutes. I think.
Yeah,
6 pitches, 27 minutes. It was a huge delay. They went to they called New York and put the phone in the bag.
Phone in a bag. It was on display, and it was always a beautiful thing.
It's like the ultimate, the ultimate monstrosity of the whole pace of play, what's wrong with baseball thing. It was bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
So let's not waste too much time on that.
I don't think I did too bad.
No, it was decent. It was a decent enough job.
I probably got some of it wrong.
But anyways, it was.
We did have to mention it because it's the biggest story of that game. I would say,
it's important. So I don't really want to poo-poo it, but it is just a hard thing to sort of describe here. And
that was a big story, and I think the other one is David Price did pitch well today. I think he took the loss, and for me, again, if you're going to make over $200 million, you got to win a game like today. You got to you give up. How about we give up 0 to 1 runs? Stop giving up 3 all the time.
Yeah.
We keep saying David Price he's having a good season, and it's true he is, but he's also giving up 2 to 3 runs every time. It's like, how about you shove and shut out a team when you need it?
And
but
it's
he did
sort
pitch
of
well.
like it's indicative of this team where even your best performers, at their peak, have their occasional warts. Like David Price has been your best starter for this entire season, but even he's susceptible to, in a situation like this where you need him to have those shutdown innings in the 4th, the 5th, and when you have that 2-0 lead. You need to win that game. And he's still prone to giving up a home run and giving up, just getting knocked around here and there.
Yeah, and it's like how about pitching to the 8th so we don't have to bring in Mr. Spin Rate.
It happened Tuesday night. Brandon Workman, for the better part of the season, has been your best reliever.
Right.
He's a guy. I even just kicked this around with you. We were just talking off the air a few weeks ago that I wouldn't mind seeing him get a chance to close out more games. And
he has lately.
He sort of deserved that opportunity. Now he gets an opportunity to close one out on Tuesday night, big game, and he pukes all over the mound. So It's just every time you think things are sort of finding their way, it's you take the step forward and you take the immediate step back, and that's kind of where we're at with things. It's just sort of in the middle, the same way we were 2 weeks ago when we sat here and talked about how they were going to approach this trade deadline.
It's true. I mean, when you look at it, there are only 3 guys on this team that I can look at and say I feel 100% fine or great about what they've done, and that is Bogarts, Betts, and Vasquez. I don't think I'm missing anybody.
Devers.
Or what did I say?
Bogarts and
Betts. Oh, no, Bogarts, Devers, and Vasquez. Right. Those are the 3 where I have no complaints whatsoever. I'm not going to poke fault in anything, and I don't think you can. The rest of the guys, including all your big-time hitters, having down seasons, your starting rotation. I mean, Chris Sale, pitched well his last couple starts, but again, not going deep in games, not overpowering. Price, he's been fine this year, but he's not, he's not pitching like an ace like he can. Obviously, we know about the bullpen.
Who's getting a longer leash than he should right now is Rick Porcello.
Well,
I feel like the criticism has not been.
I'm not sure it's a long leash. I think people have just resigned themselves to what Rick Porcello is. I think we've just accepted it. I think part of it is, and he's making what, $90 million is his contract, but he's not making over. I think if he was making like $150 million, if that was the situation, he'd be more critical.
I mean, he's making what, 20 some odd $20 million.
No, he is. No, you're right.
And in a season in which you're scrapping together every dollar imaginable to upgrade at the trade deadline, and you're getting just poor production from him.
I know
he's
been one of the worst starters in baseball.
I'm with you. I don't. The Cy Young season was a total aberration, but I think you should be able to expect somewhere in the middle of 2017 and 2018 production. I think that's reasonable. What you got last year was reasonable, and this has been his worst season yet with them.
Well, I think we said that before the season when we were talking about our X factors. I think one of mine on the pitching side was Rick Porcello, because it's which one are you going to get? If you get closer to Cy Young, then now you're really talking. And if you get bad Rick Porcello, and we've probably this is the worst we've seen from him. This is the worst Rick Porcello.
This is a bad stretch for him.
For a whole season, really. I mean, he's had a few good starts here and there, but in totality, it's been his worst season probably of his career.
But I just think
it's made a huge difference.
I don't know if it's getting enough play. How bad he struggled.
Well, it's not, because there's other. Again, you criticize Mookie Betts for hitting 60 points below what he did last season. JD Martinez, same thing, about 40 points below, 20 less home runs. It's easy to go after those guys on the pitching side.
The bullpen.
The
That's
bullpen.
The most collective, just the bullpen.
Yeah.
Everybody's first instinct says the bullpen's the problem, which I agree it's a problem, but I still, when I start looking at what's going wrong with this team, the starting rotation to me is still maybe the biggest problem.
You're right. The starting rotation doesn't get enough play.
is such a trickle-down effect on what's going on in that bullpen.
When you're in a situation where you can make the argument that Eduardo Rodriguez and his, he's got an ERA just over 4, has been your best starting pitcher this year.
He's actually been really good. He's turning.
That's not a knock on him. It's just a guy who's never really going in. Well, he's gone into the 7th more often this season.
He's pitched in the 7th in 6 of his last 8 starts.
But still, like, if the numbers that he's putting up are borderline, ace-like for you this season, or you're probably your best starting pitcher, I mean, that's a problem.
Well, see, Rodriguez is the guy that coming into the season I was sort of resigned to accepting what he is.
Me as well.
Which I think
there's
been some, there was some untapped potential there, but I think for the most part, you kind of know what you're going to get with him.
Yeah.
This guy is not working that deep into games, although, he's shown me a little bit more of something the last 11 starts or so. 8-1 with a 3.03 ERA. So he's kind of saving their ass.
I've always said that if you can just become a number 3 starter, I'm happy with that. It's the fact that for a while he was like, this guy's a number 5 starter. That's it. And so now that he's finally, getting up to being a middle to high, rotation pitcher, then, I think that's a really positive development.
So that sort of brings me to the next series. Also another huge series against the Yankees. 4 games at Fenway Park. And just sort of what you hope to learn or see from these upcoming games. Because for me, I look at the starting pitching matchups. And you have Porcello going. You have Rodriguez going. I think it's the 3rd game he's lined up for. And in the middle, you have Andrew Cashner, who we haven't even touched on. So we haven't done a podcast since that acquisition.
Yeah.
To me, those are 3 guys that you can say definitively have something to prove.
Right.
We've mentioned Porcello's struggles this season. Erod sort of turning that corner. Can he, now do that on a huge stage against the Yankees at Fenway Park? And Cashner has, to put it lightly, sucked in his first 2 starts, and now needs to show that it was a worthwhile investment. I get it that you didn't give up a lot to get him, but I mean, what's the point of having this guy if he's not going to do anything?
Not only did he suck, but I mean, did you hear what he said after the Baltimore game? His post-game interview.
What's that?
It was pretty bad. They asked him, what it was like facing his old club, or what the game was like. And keep in mind, they lost, and he said something to the effect of, "Yeah, it was fun. It was a little hot. I wish we played a night game, but yeah, it was fun. It was nice going up against your former team."
It was nice.
It's not, you got your ass
serving up
kicked.
a couple meatballs at Trey Mancini.
Yeah, and it's like I get you can take those comments out of context, but it's like I want to hear in that situation, like, there was nothing fun about that. You lost. You've been horrible since you came over. And
I also don't like his comments about the sort of it's basically saying that if you got traded to a team that wasn't in contention like the Red Sox, that he might not have pitched or whatever.
And so you have that. You have the comments about, oh, it was fun because and I wish it wasn't hot. And then the whole beard clause where he's said he will not play for a team that makes him shave his beard. It's like I look at that guy and I'm like, does he love baseball?
Yeah.
Is this guy?
It's a fair question.
Does this guy want to play or what? And it's like that's who we got.
Did you? What did you think? I mean, I know it's we're 2 starts into this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it because I don't want to go back too much. But what did you think of that deal in general? Since we haven't touched on it, what was just overall impression?
It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's it's a.
See, my thing is I don't mind the idea. I like the idea they're so strapped for what they can do anyways if they legitimately want to stay under this $246 million luxury tax threshold, which everything at this point points to them wanting to do.
Right.
So their options are severely limited. So I get it. I get that that's the type of move that you make. I'm not in love with the player, though.
No, I'm not. And it's just, I look at the stuff, and it's like, okay.
It's whatever.
It's whatever.
So this is my thing, is that, it's really a perfect storm of problems because your lack of organizational depth as it relates to starting pitching made a deal necessary. Like, you had to make a move because it's just there's nothing that you can really
and the
call
Eovaldi
upon.
Injury. Right.
And then it's twofold. So there's that problem, and then just the lack of prospects and financial flexibility precludes you from making a deal of any significance. So what you're going to get is that let's just get a guy, let's just get a body, and hope this sort of stabilizes things. And the early returns, not great.
No, but at the same time, he's number 5 starter. He's number 5 starter.
Right.
Like, I look at it, I'm like, it looks worse and it's more glaring based on how the team has performed in the position that they're in. If this was last year's Red Sox and you said they needed a fifth starter at the deadline and they were still on a 108-win pace, you'd be fine with an Andrew Cashner, I think. But considering the position the Red Sox are in and the urgency, that you can't afford to have a guy go out in any start and give up, bombs and give up, what has it been, 11 runs in his first 2 starts?
Yeah.
That makes it look so much worse. Whereas again, if this was last year's team, I think you just go, oh, whatever. We needed a body. I will say that I'm not going to pretend to know who the 2 prospects are that the Red Sox gave up. Maybe we'll ask our Sox prospects friends that at some point.
Right.
But
It's 2 lottery tickets.
But I did see it was a quote. I forget which reporter had it. I wish I knew. But they asked a Red Sox scout or executive about the 2, and those guys said we did not think that they would ask for those when we inquired about Cashner, and that they said, quote, it stung to give up those 2. And so, I mean, they could say that about anybody that's in these are like 2 17-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
But the quote read is they were being pretty genuine and saying, we thought we could fleece them a little bit, and they actually picked 2 young guys that we actually really like, and that kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, and that concerns me because I think that, we had
the state of your farm system.
We had somebody on last year that sort of made that point that, a lot of the big deals that Dave Dombrowski has made, be it the Chris Sale trade, Craig Kimbrell trade, whatever, or like dating back to his days before the Red Sox, that he has a knack for sort of throwing in these prospects.
Yeah, like they're candy.
To sweeten the pot a little bit.
Right.
And those end up being legitimate, major league regulars or just
or at least you can get more for them.
Yeah.
You can hold on to them and say, like, let's include them for a trade for something better than Andrew Cashner.
Right. And they're sort of, they're treated as pot sweeteners.
Right.
And then it just comes back to bite you. So when I saw this deal, I'm like, okay, I don't mind the idea. You bring in a guy like Cashner, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about these 17-year-old kids. They could be out of baseball within a year and a half for all I know.
Right.
But there was in the back of my mind that thought, like, I could totally see this 5-6 years from now. You're just like, oh crap, that was that Andrew, the rental that is Andrew Cashner if it ends up being the case.
From what I gather, I think it's a couple 16, 17-year-old kids in the Dominican League, the developmental projects too. But as far as I know, looking up, it's not like when Rafael Devers was that age and they signed him and he was down there was buzz about him. We already had heard about him, even though he was only like 18. I haven't really heard anything about these guys, so. But that doesn't mean they could easily, right? They're 17. Like, who the hell knows?
Yeah. So all in all, what are you looking to see from this Red Sox Yankee series? Because that's mine. Is just the starting pitching. I wanted those 3 guys each have something to prove, and what better time to do it?
For me, I would say I want them to win. Someone's calling me. Telemarketer from Milwaukee.
Oh, answer. Ask if they have any intel on the 17-year-old prospects.
Right. I want to see them win 3 out of 4. I'm sick of this. I feel like they're just going to go in and split, and it's going to be. We're going to look at it and go, what are we? They're just going to split, and I'm like, go make a statement. Win 3 out of 4. I don't think you're going to catch the Yankees in the division anyway. If you sweep the 4-game series, you're going to be 6 back. It's nothing. Snuff that.
Division's out of reach.
I agree. The division's out of reach. But win 3 out of 4. And let's look good doing it. Don't just squeak by. Win 3 out of 4, make a statement, and then let's go to the deadline and get something. But if it's just you split and you look like they have all year long, which at this point I expect, like they are what they are, and they are just an okay to above average team this year. But if they sort of turn it around and have a great series, that's a good sign. Maybe go add someone to the deadline and let's really go for this. But if it's what we've seen all along, I'm going to look at that and go, it just reinforces my belief that it's just not that kind of year, and I would sell at the deadline. But I understand I might be in the minority, but I look at it and say, I don't think this team is going to win a World Series. I know they have the talent to. It's not going to happen. I'd sell.
A big part of making that statement could be, I'm anxious to see what Nathan Eovaldi provides in the next few games, because obviously him coming back, there was some rust there. And, this whole thing, it just sort of made me uncomfortable anyways. We've touched on in the past just this notion that he's sort of the savior out in that bullpen. It's
right.
Just, I think, incredibly unrealistic and unfair, really, to him. He's never really been in that role. and all of a sudden it's just sort of like
0 saves in this big league
it's
career.
just something that you can
0.
sort of point to and be like, well, look, here's our rationale for not addressing our problems. It's
Right.
because we have this guy and he could fix the problem. And like they've backed themselves in that corner, and they've constantly sort of used that as a crutch when it comes to the bullpen. Like for the longest time was, well, we have Carson Smith and Tyler
Right.
Thornberg who could potentially help us, and it's just like
I don't know if you had
every step of the way, those have just none of this has worked out in favor of the Red Sox.
Yeah. No, it's true. And
so, like, what if Eovaldi? Sorry to cut you off, but like, what if he stinks and like you get like 4, 5, 6 appearances into this thing and he stinks in that role? Do you just wear it?
Well, and the thing is, I don't know if you're going to get that far to find out, because one way or the other, if they're going to be buyers at the deadline, I think they're going to get a real closer. I mean, for them to be sniffing around supposedly on guys like Ken Giles and Kirby Yates, I don't think either are realistic because of what I'm assuming the asking price would be. But if they're looking at those guys, that tells me they're thinking closer. And so if they're in a position to buy and they really want to go for this thing, I still think they're going to get a closer. I think, and they'll want to have it be closer. Eovaldi can do anything in any sort of inning because he can, pitch multiple innings. And then Barnes, Workman, everybody sort of slides back into the right spot. That's if they really want to go for it. If they take the sort of, we're going to just toe dip because we're not totally sold on this team, but we're going to try. Right. They'll get like a Daniel Hudson like they've talked about, or Shane Green with the Tigers, who has had a good year, but we've seen a lot of him. So yeah, I mean, I could see Nathan Eovaldi not doing well because he's never done this before, and who knows? I mean, he's barely pitched this year. That's a lot to ask for the guy. One thing that I think is worth keeping in mind as the deadline approaches, and again, I wish I knew which Red Sox reporter tweeted this, but before the Rays series started, they had a thing up where I think it was in 2016, where when Dombrowski was with the Tigers, maybe it was 2015.
Yeah, it was 15.
15. When he was with the Tigers went into the deadline with a similar record, or there was like middle of July. They had a similar record to what the Red Sox have now. They were 10 out in the division, and I believe 4 out in the wild card. And it was sort of that same scenario that we found ourselves in before the Rays series, and said, this could go either way, and depending on how it goes, will probably determine if you buy or sell. And the Tigers went 2-5 over the next 7 games and traded David Price.
Right.
And that's what Dave Dombrowski did. And so right now you've won 2 out of 3, but what if you lose 3 out of 4 to the Yankees, which could happen, they're much better than you, then you went 3-4, which is almost the same as 2-5. And at that point you have to wonder, what do we sell? And do we sell a major piece like David Price? Is JD Martinez, who would be a pretty fascinating rental power bat on the trade market? Do we look at stuff like this?
So that's sort of, those are, I've seen these 2 examples float around a lot actually. The 2015 Tigers scenario with Dombrowski in the front office and selling off pieces there, and also the Yankees of 2016 and how they were sort of in that in-between stage, fringe contenders, and they went ahead and started selling off pieces like Aroldis Chapman and Andrew Miller.
Which is like the strategy that I totally agree with, because the Red Sox are fringe contenders right now, and the Yankees probably were thinking, well, we have the talent. If we get there, anything could happen. But I think they recognized it's just not going to happen. But it's so hard for this Red Sox team because you just saw them win a World Series, where you have to have the mindset.
Well, that's my thing is that while I understand those comparisons, I don't think it's apples to apples in either scenario.
No, it's true.
The Tigers won. The Tigers weren't coming off they were coming off 3 division titles.
It was at the end of that run.
It was the end of the run. They weren't coming off a World Series win. It's just is much different. I think it's an easier sell in Detroit than to be able to try and spin that to the media in Boston.
Yeah, with the talent on this Red Sox team, you look at it and say, these guys just won a World Series. If we can just get in, I don't believe in them, but you could easily make the case for if you get in the playoffs, anything can happen, and that's what their mindset should be, because you never know how long these windows will stay open.
And and then in the instance of the Yankees, I mean, there were very identifiable pieces that they could sell, and identifiable pieces that they could plug in to sort of get a look at down the stretch. I mean, you had like this influx of young talent that you could say, all right, well, now this is going to create an opportunity for Aaron Judge, for instance, like somebody like that you can sort of plug in. See, the Red Sox, the thing about them is if they sell, I mean, who are you selling? You mentioned somebody like JD Martinez, but like even that's a tricky proposition. Like I don't know how those discussions are going to go, given the uncertainty surrounding his contract. and whether he's going to opt out or he's got the 3 years and with 60 some
Well,
odd
it doesn't
million
matter. I mean,
dollars.
someone would pay a lot of money would pay a steep price for JD Martinez because it's one of the best hitters in the game. It doesn't matter if he can opt out. It's a rental. That's what it is.
If I'm the Red Sox, I'm also thinking to myself that I intend to contend for a World Series next year, and
Right.
I think JD Martinez is going to be a big part of that.
Right.
So I don't
the
know.
Mookie Betts one is the more fascinating one because that feels like it's a real possibility.
I just think that there's a lot when it comes to position players. I think you're more apt to see them moved over the winter when teams have more flexibility, and it's just so hard. And we've done this ad nauseum, just screwing around out in the content center, kicking around some ideas.
Right.
That who would go out and make a play for a guy like Mookie Betts? Obviously any team in baseball would love to have him, but it's so hard to find a match there.
I know.
Which team needs outfield help and. See, Martinez for me is a guy that would completely change the complexion of some of these lineups. So
right. But I think the Betts thing, you'd have to find a team that some GM that hasn't won ever or in a long time and wants to make a splash. I've been saying in the office, San Diego, even though they have a great outfield, and you say, why would you? You're fine with the outfield. I'm like, well, Mookie Betts makes it that much better. And so I've always, what if it's Will Myers and a prospect? And so who knows, anything. But you have to identify a team like that hasn't won in a long time. But to that end, I think that's why I would look at this type of stuff at the deadline because you can always get more at the deadline than in the winter because you get 2 runs out of Mookie Betts in that scenario, not just one. Those 2 guys are the sexiest names. But I don't think David Price is tradable. I think he has no trade clause anyway.
Yes, so I think.
And Rick Porcello, who wants Rick Porcello, especially at that money?
Mitch Moreland is somebody. Does a contender want to take him on? Those are guys like Rick Porcello and Mitch Moreland. You're going to have to eat a significant portion of the money, and that would just be. I would even look at those as not even. I mean, you're selling off your impending free agents, but I don't view either of those guys as game changers. So I think you could sell those pieces off and still, vie for a wild card spot.
Interesting one is that they reportedly were sniffing around on Jose Abreu.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I say, well, first of all, it's probably just teams leaking, agents leaking stuff, and none of it's real anyway. But I look at that and I'm like, if they're thinking about adding a Jose Abreu, or if that's something that they're tossing around, that means it tells me that they're thinking of adding or trading somebody big. And that because if you're going to do that, you need a star coming back in return to sell to the fan base. And I don't know, would you trade, even if let's say it's not Mookie Betts, but let's say, would you trade Chavis and prospects for Jose Abreu and I forget the closer that's with the White Sox, but he's pretty good. Actually.
Alex Colomé.
Yeah. Would you trade Chavis and a prospect or 2 for Jose Abreu?
I still think that they're going to operate with the intention of staying under that luxury tax threshold. So it's so hard to dive into these hypotheticals that require them to blow past that. They'd have to. Somehow the money would have to work because I don't see them going past that money.
I've also seen some stuff floating around online that the Red Sox now are they'd be okay going over the luxury tax again, or they're now more open to it, and which tells me why now when you're not nearly as good as you were? Why wouldn't you have thought that way last year when you clearly had the team capable? So that
a lot
of weird stuff.
Why would you prioritize adding Andrew Cashner and making the deal work the way that they did, where they took on, where Baltimore took on a certain amount of money to make it so that they fit under that threshold? It just seemed all of their maneuvers to this point have sort of led me to believe that they're serious about that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what how that would work with Abreu, but I will say that one thing about that is, I do think first base has been sort of an underrated problem for this team this year. I mean, you look at
Mitch Moreland's. He was leading the team in home runs at the time when he went down.
Yeah, but he got off. There was a lot of power there, and there was some swing and miss.
Right. He's Mitch Moreland. We know what Mitch Moreland is.
Exactly.
But
which is fine.
But the stability there, and especially if you had gotten anything out of Steve Pearce close to what you got last year, the idea of that platoon was great entering the season. You thought the left-right combination there is going to be awesome, and they're both great defensively. And you've basically had none of that the whole season.
You've had from the position, it's 25th in WAR, 26th in average, 27th in on-base percentage, dead last in strikeout percentage, and a
lot of that's Chavis now, especially.
Right, which
he's making that a lot worse.
But so you're getting this this terrible production, and you're doing so while basically paying about $13 million, because that's what you have tied up between Moreland and Pierce.
Right.
And that's sort of you're a little hamstrung with addressing other areas because of the money that you're filtering into first base. So I think that's, I'm not going to point to first base and say this is the biggest problem for the Red Sox, but that's certainly an issue that has just compounded their problems this year.
Right. That's true. I mean, it's weird. I'm a weird Red Sox fan in that, of course, I want them to be competitive, and it's good for us here. It's good for. I mean, you want the baseball team to do well, but a part of me wouldn't hate some major shakeup, because I think you can really shake it up and remain competitive, especially with that second wild card spot now. And again, I'm not advocating for trading Mookie Betts and JD Martinez, but if let's say, just for the sake of argument, you did both of those, which I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility, and you got some real blue chip prospects like the Yankees got in Gleyber Torres, or if you get a really big time pitching prospect, or some major leaguers, whatever you get. I mean, I think the fact that we've now identified Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts as can really be the future of this team. You can remain competitive. You still got Chris Sale. You can fill in these other pieces. I think you could really shake this thing up and still be a really good team. And just selfishly, I think it would just be really interesting and fascinating to watch, because we haven't really had that in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's just that the sort of intangible infusion of energy, having a little.
Right.
I mean, just some sort of, mixing and matching a little bit as opposed to what you've had, which just seems it just seems stale for the most part. I think it's a good way to describe it.
It's just
stale.
And again, the whole Mookie Betts thing, it's just, I look at it and say, someone's going to give him $300 million. I don't want it to be the Red Sox, because I don't think he's worth it, and I'm not totally sold that he likes Boston anyway. So it's if some team is going to blow you away, you have to consider that if you're the Red Sox.
So a couple of the names that you mentioned, just to touch on that real quick: Kirby Yates and Ken Giles. MLB Network's John Morosi reporting that the Red Sox showed some active interest in those two closers. I think,
price is way too high.
I think that's pie in the sky.
Yeah, it's not even worth talking about, because other teams can offer more than you can.
Ken Rosenthal has since followed up and speculating that, in order to get Kirby Yates from San Diego, it's probably going to take a package basically of what the Yankees got in 2016 when they traded Chapman and Andrew Miller.
And that was Gleyber Torres.
Gleyber Torres was the Chapman deal, and Chapman was an impending free agent, whereas Yates is under contract through next year.
So that's
Miller had 2 years remaining, and they got Clint Frazier and Justice Sheffield.
And that's
Sheffield then flipped for James Paxton.
Right. Right. And so that's
not only would I not want to give up a package like that, but the Red Sox are incapable of putting together a package like that.
Right. Your number one prospect is in single A ball, and Tristan Casas.
Right. And
then Bobby Dalbec, your number two prospect in most scenarios, is on most lists anyway, is we still have no idea what that is with how often he strikes out. So like you said, they can't even put that package together. So you'd have to send 7 prospects. They have to be volume over, you have to be quantity over quality.
Would you take just a random toss-up? Would you take Yates or Giles, if given all things being equal?
Well, Kirby Yates. Yeah, just because Ken Giles is a head case.
Yeah,
the guy's a nut.
I think the more likely scenario is that I think the Daniel Hudson thing is a realistic possibility.
Right, something like that.
Which, Morosi, again, he was reporting that the Red Sox among the teams to evaluate him. But whatever, that move to me it's fine. You're gonna get, that's probably what you're gonna get. But do I think that's gonna move the needle? No. I mean, you're talking about a 32-year-old journeyman who, he's been good dating back to May, over his last 17 appearances. He's got a 0.89 ERA, but also his ERA for the year is much lower than his FIP, would suggest that he's bound for some regression here. Just a lackluster walk rate, strikeout rate, just not a guy that I look at and say this is gonna. It's just basically more of what you have.
Right.
So it's whatever. It's a whatever addition if that's the direction they go, and I think that's ultimately what you're gonna see.
I'd like them to make a play for someone like Edwin Diaz with the Mets, who has had a horrible year this season and should lose that closer job, but is a year removed from being the best closer in the game, and is still young. So I don't know, maybe you can get the Mets to give up on him. Again, I'm just throwing stuff at the wall, but I agree with you that it's going to be something like that. with what we saw a couple years ago with the Addison Reed trade being sort of like the most you're going to see.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a good trade for this team. That's kind of something I would like.
But
to
I
see.
also think Addison Reed is better than anything that's available at the Red Sox price tag right now. And I mean, like Addison Reed was a pretty legit reliever.
Right.
Like that was a nice pickup. I saw that. I saw the rumored interest, and I thought, okay, I can get down with Addison Reed. I look across the league right now, and some of the guys that Hudson being like a classic example. Unless you're going out and getting like this top level closer, there's just a lot of collection of crap that the Red Sox already have.
Right.
Which is like,
again, it's redundant.
You can't really complain too much given the cost of acquisition, but at the same time,
how you have to look at these guys is how. If you're on a fan of another team and you saw that your team is interested in Brandon Workman, and then you look at the stats and go, holy crap, Brandon Workman has been better than Adam Ottavino this year. If you looked a few days ago before he gave up a bunch of runs and his ERA got inflated, but he had a 1.2 ERA, all these numbers. He looks like one of the best relievers in the game. If you're a fan of that team, you go, all right, sure. And if you're a Red Sox fan, you realize, that doesn't tell the story of Brandon Workman.
It's also
it's an
interesting name to bring up though, because if they were to start selling off pieces, like that's probably a guy you float out there a little bit.
Right.
I mean, I think he's on a contract through next season. You're obviously selling it. You're selling high at this point, given his numbers for the most part. So, and it'd be interesting to see if that's somebody gets floated around. Another Jackie Bradley Jr.
I mean.
Don't
get me started there.
I mean,
when it was supposedly a year ago, we had the opportunity to trade Jackie Bradley Jr. for Jose Abreu. Not to keep bringing up Jose Abreu, but that was a thing back then, and the Red Sox declined.
Doesn't it feel like Jose Abreu is going to end up playing for the Red Sox when he's like 39 years old?
Or the Yankees,
because they just have this weird infatuation with him.
Yeah.
And he'll suck. He'll hit
I love
like
Jose
210.
Abreu. Yeah.
And he'll strike out 250 times, but whatever. It'll be fun for a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. It's, I think one way or the other, we're probably going to get an answer here after the Yankee series. That'll bring us to, the 29th?
Yep.
So, after the Yankee series. So
they have Monday, the off day.
So I think by the time we do our next
29th.
podcast, we're going to have a pretty clear picture of.
We're going to be right in the thick of it. So,
yeah.
I don't know. So, just what needs to happen for them to go into full sell mode or full buy mode? Because it just feels like right now, as I've mentioned, you're going to get those more.
What I think is going to happen is if they split with the Yankees, I think you're going to get a Daniel Hudson type thing.
Yeah,
you're going to get something like that.
If they get swept, you're going to see some pieces.
If they get swept, I think they're going to sell off some pieces. And if they sort of dominate the Yankees, I think you might see them go get a Ken Giles or something like that. It just depends on how it looks. It's a statement, it's a statement series. It's not just how many games do you win, it's how do you look.
Yeah.
If it looks the same and you just barely squeak by, because remember the Yankees, I mean, it's Red Sox Yankees.
This 2 out of 3 they just took from the Rays.
Yeah.
You
look at you're like, all right.
On the surface, you took 2 out of 3 from a team that's ahead of you. Like, you gained a game.
Right.
So
you're also a few days removed from losing 2 out of 3 to Baltimore. So it's like, did we really change the season around? Of course not.
I find it hard to believe that they'll be big buyers. Like, I think they'll make the small move. I could see if they do get swept, them going into sell mode and selling off. Just again, I don't think they have these huge pieces that some of the past examples that have been brought up that were involved in those. Like, you don't have the. I mean, you do have David
Price.
Also,
do you sell after? Sorry, continue.
No. But like, you don't have these clear pieces that you can just float out there. Like, it's much more nuanced.
It's also, do you sell after just selling 2 prospects for Andrew Cashner? So I look at
you might sell Andrew Cashner.
That's what I'm saying. If you're going to sell, then trade Andrew Cashner.
And
so,
I mean, yeah, JD Martinez I think is the most interesting name.
But you get a lot for him.
But and who's to say? I mean, could you, in theory, trade him and then re-sign him this offseason at essentially the same deal?
Trade him to like the San Francisco Giants.
I don't know.
For like one of their top
prospects. The Giants,
they're surging now. Maybe now they're like, we're going to buy.
Who do you think, just to go off the grid here a little bit, who do you think is going to be the biggest name that's traded across Major League Baseball? Because the Giants are a very interesting team.
Either Stroman, I think Stroman to the Yankees is a real thing that could happen, and that's a big move. That'd be a pretty.
We touched on this like a couple weeks ago, but I love the idea of Stroman and Giles to the Yankees.
Yeah, like two hateable guys.
Yeah,
I don't really
let's
hate
do it.
Marcus Stroman. Giles is hateable.
Yeah.
Marcus Stroman's fine, but I could see Marcus Stroman going to the Yankees because the Yankees are in full let's go for it mode, and their starting pitching is not good enough. I don't think anyway, and I'm sure they know that too. And we've seen reports out there that that it's basically other executives have said it's a guarantee the Yankees are going to add a top flight starter. So who that is, I don't know. I think for a while it looked like it could be Madison Bumgarner. Now the Giants are probably going to hold on to him, as they should, because they're on this crazy streak right now. So after that, who do you go to? Someone like Marcus Stroman, who they've been tied to. Stroman has said he'd love to pitch for the Yankees. Not like he has any say in the matter, but I think that is, if I'm going to do my prediction or my bold take, I would say Stroman to the Yankees.
Okay.
Will happen.
I'll say Noah Syndergaard.
Okay.
I think he's going to land with either two teams, Astros or the Padres. Both teams with the prospect capital. You're getting a guy for however many years he has left. That just sort of fits a short and long-term vision for both of those teams. It just fits perfectly in the window.
Yeah, I can see that.
Get him in maybe a little bit of a reduced cost given the season that he's had.
Right, exactly.
So,
yeah, I can see that.
all right.
Anything else?
You got anything else? You want to touch on the protest again and try and dance around that?
The protest? No, I've said all I can say about it.
Any updates on that?
I hated the Marco Hernandez being sent down. I hated that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this.
I get it, because the way the roster is right now, but it's like,
so
do we need Sam Travis?
So just to touch on this real quick, Marco Hernandez, option to AAA with Mitch Moreland coming back. It seems like the plan is that you're going to have Moreland obviously playing first against righties. Chavis will get some time against lefties, probably play some second base against righties with Moreland playing first. Sam Travis sticks around. The idea Cora said was that he didn't want to be too left-handed heavy with keeping Marco Hernandez, which I don't know. It just to me it's sort of a weird message given how hard, how well Marco Hernandez has played. Coming back from the injury sort of adds to like this guy's working his ass off mentality. I don't know. It's something to that I like having in the clubhouse.
Yeah. Keep in mind rosters expand in a little over a month, so I mean he's going to be back.
It's not.
It's
huge.
more about just right now in a vacuum. It's a weird look. It's a weird message.
Michael Chavis is a tough one too. I mean, he's been pretty league average since his hot start.
Right. But I think it's important to give him these reps and give him these at bats, and I think we've seen enough that. I look at Chavis and I say a 270 season with 35 homers is in there. So you got to let him develop, give him the at-bats.
It's just interesting that what evidently went into the decision was the idea that you can play him against lefties. He's hitting 196 with a 233 on-base percentage against lefties this year.
Yeah, and he's been striking out a ton too. So
whatever. Yeah,
I just like Marco Hernandez, and I think he's a good player.
I do too. I like him a lot. He'll be back up soon enough, but
I think the real factor is that Brock Holt's hitting like 350 or something. If Brock Holt wasn't doing so well, not to say you would release Brock Holt, but it's like
Brock Holt's another name to watch if they start selling off pieces. He's always been a guy that I think is more valuable to the Red Sox than he is.
Agreed.
That you'd get in the trade market, and I think ultimately they're going to end up re-signing him.
Maybe Marco Hernandez is a piece in the trade. Maybe Marco Hernandez is somebody you could trade for somebody. I don't know.
Whatever. Who knows? All right.
Just spitballing.
Let's get out of here. We will have probably a lot more information next week based on what happens. We'll be back to recap the Red Sox-Yankees series, touch on the trade deadline, whether we do this before, after, during, who knows?
We'll figure something out, yeah.
But we're going to jet out of here. I'm Ricky Doyle. That's Dakota Randall. Any last thoughts?
No.
All right.
I'm tired. I want to go.
Have a good week, everyone.